rhyme making no sense to make dollars and holler on our ground. Rounds leave Moors dead in parlors. So-called blacks call them cracker, then get called Canadian. The rhyme making no sense to make dollars and holler on our grounds. Rounds leave Moors dead in parlors. So-called blacks call them cracker, then get called Canadian, and shun Moors that say they're not Canadian. This world is full of crazy men with no knowledge of self, but got the most expensive cars and flat screens on the wall shelf, going all the way to try to help you change what you won't. And I hardly hear your opinion of Marcus Garvey, but Steve Harvey stands out, true coon and jester, making a fool of you and himself for wealth. To me, those sellouts need to get bodied or exiled to Dr. Moreau's island with Gentiles and reptiles. Fake slave ships stacking bodies and piles, giving fake Jews slave respect, not giving me smiles, calling children kids, chasing after Taji guys, supremacy, use albino and half-breed spies. We catch trespassers with razors and mesh, pedophile, torture, scotch bonnet and open flesh. Traitors get the shitty end of the stick. Our leaders murderers should have been crushed with pyramid bricks. Huey Newton and Hampton killers should be in front of a squad shooting by any means necessary. Get out the beast belly. Why y'all get mad glory and your flow's mad corny? Your skin tight jeans put you in F category. Most rappers' names on lists for rhyme pad or lorry, making me comments mad derogatory. Why y'all get mad glory and your flow's mad corny? Your skin tight jeans put you in F category. Most rappers' names on lists for rhyme pad or lorry, making me comments mad derogatory. It's all about balance, my art the beam. Sellouts made it mainstream. Underground is almost unseen. Gay A&R signed the rappers' contracts in blood. Took his soul, body didn't fall with a thud. He's a zombie, dyed hair, dress wearing thug. Burn that garbage, too much to sweep under the rug. Police can't collar a crime without snitches. You're lucky to escape their custody, not dead with just stitches. Make you hate your hair, take Hindus to Ganesha possess ya, and raising your blood pressure. Anything to do with Moors, they don't want you near. Don't search where it's black, you won't find it there. No matter how much you beg, they won't tell you where. No matter how much you don't have, they won't tell you here. Negroes weren't the first slaves, no reparations first. While you wait for your reparations, it looks like a hearse. They won't pay you reparations anyway, only if you agree to make yourself black and gay. Instead of towards Moors, they want you to stray. Won't find your mind when it's in disarray. Thinking being European is the only way. Hurling insults at your creator, she will get you later. Why y'all get mad glory and your flow's mad corny? Your skin tight jeans put you in F category. Most rappers' names on lists for rhyme pad or lorry, making me comments mad derogatory. Why y'all get mad glory and your flow's mad corny? Your skin tight jeans put you in F category. Most rappers' names on lists for rhyme pad or lorry, making me comments mad derogatory. What's the reason for the treason is the question and the lesson. I hear most professing, but really possessing. Taking minds messing with thought patterns and pathways. Nero wanna be a hero when they really cipher, not Neo, not Morpheus or Gillen finding Nemo. Selling out with no remorse, you and yours. Calling you black, showing you who's the boss. Always marching, but never thought sue the police force or do like Haitians. Add some voodoo, of course. You might hurt them unexpected. It could be bloody. Feel yourselves curl and your hair stand from walking duppies. Looked, all of a sudden, judge yelled and wept. In court, judge with cold sweats and throat strap. He can't talk yet, cause the candle was lit before I left. Forget Africa, hip-hop was the grand theft. Why y'all get mad glory and your flow's mad corny? Your skin tight jeans put you in F category. Most rappers' names on lists for rhyme pad or lorry, making me comments mad derogatory. Why y'all get mad glory and your flow's mad corny? Your skin tight jeans put you in F category. Most rappers' names on lists for rhyme pad or lorry, making me comments mad derogatory.
And I know what time it is.
Yo, me too, bro. Yeah. Iron. Shit. Moorish Master MC. Hey, yo. What up? What up? You already know. Audio mechanics, what up? Yo, no need for a swatch watch. I read the time in the signs like prophets and seers. Put a hex on the beers. Put some wicker on Leopold and Mussolini offspring. To the ancestors, to their blood as my offering. Oshuno Lapunya, may I show me reflections in water like balls of crystal. Wars with penis missiles. Sun gaze and see gods peeping from behind. I'm learning to love instead of hate and be kind, cause yes, I know. I'm thinking it's time for the wake up. Good morning as I'm yawning. Check my phone, it's only 2 a.m. Thoughts bubble like a cauldron. Feeling the tonin drip from my pineal gland. Activating my mitochondrial DNA strands. Stimulating my chakras like a camera captures. I did foresee the rapture. Storms falling in Turkey like rain from the sky. My farmer shoveling thousands of bees that died from radioactive waves from cell phone towers. As niggas babble and debate falsehood for hours. No PhD, but they call themselves doctors. We living in the time of false prophets. When we hear them speak, got the feeling awkward. It's like they speak a language I don't understand or talk with. Their tongues fork like utensils, and they stay playing with your mental.
I know what time it is.
Islam Moors. Peace and love to all the Moors. Everywhere that they're at, we want to give supreme honors to you for knowing and being what you know. Islam to all of the Moors that remain studious. All the Moors who, no matter what is going on in their life, they find some time to go in on some studies for themselves, just because they know that their ancient foremothers and forefathers didn't play around with being some dumb niggers. Ancient foremothers and forefathers didn't play around with not having knowledge of self. Ancient foremothers and forefathers were always on point, no slipping. Why are they always on point? Because they knew themselves. As soon as they stopped knowing themselves and they started straying after the gods of Europe of who they knew nothing, they started not being themselves. And as Moors, we know that we are the founders of teaching people. We started that stuff.
No, I came from ancient Kemet.
Yeah, ancient Kemets in North Africa. Dumbass. So they were Moors, because you already know Moors are from North Africa. And Egypt is North Africa. Stop all your BS. All of it. When we go to Timbuktu, don't even talk about anybody else. Because Egypt is the capital of the Moorish Empire. And the Moorish Empire is bigger than Egypt. And Timbuktu and Shanghai and all of this stuff that you want to claim is some black empire of some. Moors are dark-skinned people, especially African Negroes who don't know themselves. Especially them are Moors. Forget the people who you might speculate or whatever. But when you see a dumb nigger, know that that's a Moor. When you see a conscious goof guy dressing up like he came from some other planet, but then He don't have any papers, ID, nothing to prove the planet that he came from. They're Moors. Don't believe what they're telling you about what they are. Don't fall for it. All of them are playing you because everybody knows that you're Moors. Everyone, the entire world. Which is why, you know, just going to put it on the record. Actually, no, we're never going to put it on the record. Just don't worry. No Mujuali Day. You're going to get it. Just know you're going to get it. Right? And of course, before we carry on, you know, there's a lot more.
There's love.
What's good?
There's love to the Moors in the chat, too. It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. What's it? What is it? How many people other than MHHS? Who else been doing it consecutive?
I don't know many.
I don't know many.
Not giving the facts to the contrary neither. Probably just on there just talking.
Right. Been consistent. Been consistent. And it's Tuesday. So before we actually go in to where we're gonna go today, because people want to bring up, you know, nature knows no color line and stuff and like that, and try to pretend like, you know, they want to bring up Barbary books and try to pretend like Moors are absent in those talks. And the only people that talked about are black people, who some might classify as Hebrew or Israelite or whatever. You know that our people are lost. One of the biggest, probably the most dirty Moor to turn around after being a dirty bastard was W.E.B. Du Bois. Because he went up against the forerunner for the status and the credit and the nobility and the fame. And you already know what happened to Marcus Garvey already. So don't say you don't know who you've been following for the past however long. You know what side you picked. When you put up Elijah Muhammad and Noble Drew Ali, we already know what side people picked, just based on who's still around right now. So in 1934, he came out, told these people, remember, this is changing tune and stuff like that, because he realized he was a jackass when he started dissing Garvey. Remember, this is their boy. This is their boy. You don't rep him like that. But this is their boy. "1934, a Negro nation within a nation. A Negro nation within a nation." And then, of course, they got to capitalize the N right there, because they're trying to push the point to you that you're black. And you have some nation that you can't identify in any geographical landmass on the planet, but you have a nation though, called Negro, or called carbon, or called melanin, or called Atsikata, or called whatever they want to make up and say that this thing exists called a nation. They can't show you a flag. They can't show you a culture. They say that they came over here on ships from Africa, but they're a nation. FOH. Forget all that NAACP and all of that BS. These people know what was up and they know what the solution is, but they keep calling it Negroes stuff. Instead of calling it what they're supposed to call it, stop playing the BS. Nothing else to call it than what it is. You can't make up stuff. You can't put a capital N on it and say that that's a nation. It doesn't work like that in the world. But there, boy, no more critical situation ever faced the Negroes of America than that of today. Not in 1830, nor in 1861, nor in 1867. More than ever, the appeal of the Negro for elementary justice falls on deaf ears. 34, they knew. 34, they knew. Elementary justice. Not universal justice or nothing like that. Elementary justice. Negroes can't even get elementary justice. And remember, there he's making a reference point of 1830 to 1860. Then 34. But he's referencing years before, same BS. How do they come to these conclusions? Because after they sell out or whatever, and they actually get to sit down by themselves in their big library or whatever, and they pick up some of these books that they've been neglecting to read, they start realizing that everybody knows that Noble Drew came and brought something to the Negroes in America to wake them up out of their sleep that they were under, thinking that they came from somewhere else. And these are the people who, on their deathbed, came around. You know, people who late in their career, now they want to talk in favor of certain people that they used to be dissing. Because they know that time's up.
Yep.
You didn't think about time's up when you sold out? How come you didn't think about time's up when you sold out? Three-fourths of us are disenfranchised. Yet no writer on democratic reform, no third-party movement says a word about Negroes. The Bull Moose Crusade in 1912, Bull Moose Crusade, 1912. Remember the timeline. Every timeline from 1900s, when you hear something, they always, okay, what would Noble Drew be doing in that year?
Yep.
Every time you hear Bull Moose Crusade, 1912. The La Follette Uprising in 1924, LAFOLLETTE. La Follette Uprising in 1924 was hardly aware of them. The socialists still keep them in the background. Negro children are systematically denied education. Oh, does this sound familiar? Remember, this is 1934 he's talking about. How come the same stuff keeps happening still? How come he's talking about stuff from 1934 that people are still going through today who call themselves, what they call themselves? Black? Oh, interesting. So the Negro people went through something, and then in the future, Black people are going through the same stuff that Negro people went through, and your dumbass still doesn't get the game. You really don't get it still. All right. When the National Education Association, oh yeah, speaking about that, Negro children are systematically denied education. Hey, Brother Yusuf, you have a child. You have someone who goes to their school or whatever like that. Are they systematically denied education?
Are they systematically denied education? The true de jour education, yes. They're not getting that true de jour education. If your child is not coming home and getting the proper true education, they're making sure that your child is not getting the truth. They're making sure of that. They're making sure of that. Your child has to come back home and get a whole new thought process when they come home. If not, warped. They're gonna get them just like they got us. They're gonna start.
Oh, say that one again. Ooh, that one hurt me. That one hurt me. Say that one again.
They're gonna get your children just like they got us.
Remember when we got it? Think back. Like I remember going to the little evaluation class or whatever. And there's only certain brothers in there and some people who back then we would call retarded or whatever like that. What the hell am I doing in here? Whatever, giving you aptitude tests and all types of BS. Just to see where they're gonna slot you in.
They get funding for that too. The more children that go to their school that's got a claim of disability, just like parents get a check for their disability check, they get checks for their children coming in here for disability. So
right, and that's really because they're disabled because they're going there.
Yep.
Right, and then there's like Brother User said, they're supposed to get home and get the reverse of what they got all day for 8 hours.
Yep. And if you're not in the knowing right now, because they're picking up speed, like they're doing contracts. Like, okay, I remember my Moabite, she had to go into the school because, like you said, those classes they try to put you in. They figured out a way. You don't have to be disabled physically. You can be disabled in the mind.
Yep.
And they're getting checks. So now they'll make a program up where, oh, your child is behind a little. And now he needs extra help and you need to sign him up for this program. And that's the proposition they came to my Moabites about. But her knowing what was going on, she knew that the only reason, this is some program that if I don't sign my son up for, y'all going to send DSS or whatever alphabet people to my house and saying I'm neglecting my child.
Right.
And then like all of that, that's everything. They're picking up warp speed, they're picking up speed. Like, so if you don't know who you are, they're going to get you. That direct direction, I don't want DSS coming to my, it's just some program I'm signing up. But you just put your son into something that, or daughter into something they should have never been in.
Yeah.
Now the school's going to get a check. Your child is going to have that on their so-called record going through the school when they graduate. All that's going to be on there for the rest of their life. None of that's going to go away. They're going to keep that on there and keep making so-called money off your disabled child that you signed up for because you don't know what's going on. You're not in the knowing. You don't know, oh, this is some fraudulent contract y'all try to put me in. And because they knew that my Moabite knew, they taught her the proper way to sign the contract and not put my son in there, and she wouldn't even be bothered by anybody because they knew she knew. But once they know you don't know, oh, you just another check. They just doing their job now. Now I'm just doing my job. But when you know, oh, they totally different presentation they give you. They didn't come at my Moabites with the oh, you have to, they would, oh, we have to show you this paper because we're showing everybody. Well, we know that their son doesn't have to, totally different presentation. But a lot of my friends' children go to the school. First thing they do when they get home, they call me. Did your son get da-da-da-da-da? So, and I'm telling them the way it happens to me, and they telling me what happened to them, where they had to sign their child up for it because they were. That's where I got the story from. My friend told me, well, they were going to send DSS to my house if I didn't sign my son up because he's not in the full going knowing. He didn't put anyone on notice about who his child was, who he was, or nothing like. So they're going in with him.
Right.
They're going in on him.
Assumed to be Negro.
Right.
So they treat you accordingly.
Yep.
That's crazy.
So systematic. Overall, they getting you.
Yeah.
So in the school, they getting you they're gonna get you signing some contracts with the school to give up your child's rights. Willingly, you sign over your child's rights. Filling out all them contracts, you have no idea what you're doing. You just going to school. Yeah, okay.
And it goes back to that thing again of it only happens to the people who are part of some fake nation.
Yep.
Like we're saying, this is not just one individual. Ample amount of Moors. It's like schools calling home for stuff. You know what I mean? They are making no contracts with them. Like they have to be very delicate with the Moors' offspring at the school. They're not dealing with him like they deal with Johnny. Like it's a different arrangement. Because again, putting them on notice that I'm not Negro. So don't expect the Negro stuff to be expressed or to be implemented into my offspring. It's not going down like that. When the National Education Association asks for federal aid to education, it permits discrimination to be perpetuated by the present local authorities. Once or twice a month, Negroes convicted of no crime are openly and publicly lynched and even burned. Yet a national crime convention is brought to perfunctory and unwilling notice of this only by mass picketing and all but illegal agitation. Did you say mass what? Mass picketing? Is that the same stuff they're doing today? Oh yeah, because they're black, which is really Negro. Because Negro means black. So there's still the Negro problem. It's just black now. When a man with every qualification is refused a position simply because his great-grandfather was black, there is not a ripple of comment or protest. Right? Why wouldn't you be discriminated against if you have every qualified position, but you're calling yourself black? There's no way that you have every qualified position There's no way that you can have every qualified position and be black. There's no way.
Nope. So that. So the black nationalist stuff is a fraud.
Has to be. The only thing it can be. Because like we're saying, all the things that the boy is talking about are happening to Negroes in the 1930s. So if it's happening to the Negroes, and we already know how Negroes look like, and then the people today, it's happening to the same stuff. And instead of them doing what they're supposed to do, they're picketing just like they picketed when they were Negroes. These people don't have to change the game. They don't have to, all they have to do is keep doing the Negro acts on these people.
Same thing going on.
They're not even revamping anything. They're using some 1800 statutes on people in 2018. You know how crazy that is? Just because these people want to be classified as something that puts them under the jurisdiction of those acts and statutes.
Yep.
And they're willingly doing it. They're not being forced to, you know, chains and shackles and all that stuff. This man is talking about this in the 1930s, after Marcus Garvey, after Noble Drew Ali, when everything fell to shambles. Why did it fall to shambles? Because, you know, they took away the two pillars. But again, once you take the head, the body supposed to grow another head. You're not supposed to take the head and then the body dies. You're supposed to take the head and another head grow.
That's the symbol of the chopping off the three Moors' heads. They're trying to say they got rid of the whole thing.
It's done for because they got the head.
Yep.
You know, people bring their head on the platter and all that stuff like that. It's because of the Moors. You know, the platter just turned to the circle that's the seal or the coin or the whatever.
Yep. Yep.
But a Moor's head in a circle is a head on a platter.
But they want to accept the illusion of the colorable nationals. Like, they want to accept that. They love the illusion of fake black nations. They love that.
Yeah, because they can say and not do.
Yep.
What they have to do is say that we're a nation, and then, you know, their mentality is that people are looking at them like a nation because they said so.
That's why there's so much confusion in that, and just, like, they can just say whatever, you know, not say any facts, no nothing, because it's an illusion. It's not real.
Exactly.
They can just say a bunch of stuff, get people riled up off of their emotions, and that's the end of it. That's just got a couple of likes, some shares, and stuff like that. That's what they're doing it for that illusion.
Right.
That's the.
Yep. Yeah, they're not doing it for the cry on the phone because, you know, whoever came to their house took their children or whatever.
Yep.
And you got to be on the phone with these people after they go through this madness. So if they get kidnapped or something like that, you're talking to them, collect calls and all that. They don't want that part. They want the likes and the share part. They want the what is it? 700,000 views?
700,000 views.
700,000 views stuff. That's what they want. You know what I mean? They couldn't be, you know, mortgage broker or whatever like that, but they could be a YouTube guru. And they'd be a YouTube guru and they have 1 million followers. They're just a YouTube guru.
Yep.
No nation. Claiming their nation, But you can't see them on the map. You can't pull out a map and see them. But they're a nation. But then they're a nation, but then they're mad that people aren't providing stuff for them. But you're saying that you're a nation.
Yep.
So what do you want? Can't say you're a nation and then want handouts. Like you
What is it? Copper Nation? Melanin Nation? And why can't nobody just be Moors? Everything else but a Moor. Make up everything, Aborigine Nation, like
language, nations, whatever.
everything but more. Everybody want to be everything but more. Because like you said, as soon as they say who they are as a Moor, it's all over. The gig's up. You got to take some responsibility now. You can't be running around doing Negro colored black things because you know who you are. You can't lie and get away with it. You know, like the whole overall, you know better. You a Moor, right? You know better than. But if you play the colored game, can't nobody expecting nothing from you. So then you can play that and then sell it too.
Yep. Well, yeah. Once you know how to sell it, it's over.
Oh, the illusion sells.
Yep. Sells good too.
Yeah. That's right. The illusion sells. Fake sells.
Yeah,
people
real,
up there
real
talking.
doesn't sell. Yeah, real doesn't sell.
Right.
Long before the Depression, Negroes in the South were losing Negro jobs, those assigned them by common, custom, poorly paid, and largely undesirable toil, but nevertheless life-supporting. New techniques, new enterprises, mass production, impersonal ownership and control have been largely displaced, and skilled white and Negro workers in tobacco manufacturing, in iron and steel, in lumbering and mining, and in transportation. Negroes are now restricted more and more to common labor and domestic service of the lowest paid and worst kind. In textile, chemical, and other manufacturers, Negroes were from the first nearly excluded, and just as slavery kept the poor white out of profitable agriculture, so freedom prevents the poor Negro from finding a place in manufacturing. The worldwide decline in agriculture is moreover carried. The worldwide decline in agriculture has moreover carried the mass of black farmers, despite heroic endeavor among the few, down to the level of landless tenants and peons. The World War, in its wild aftermath, seemed for a moment to open a new door. 2 million black workers rushed north to work in iron and steel, make automobiles and pack meat, build houses, and do the heavy toil in factories. They met first the closed trade union, which excluded them from the best paid jobs and pushed them into the low wage gutter, denying them homes and mobbed them. They then met the Depression. Since 1929, timeline again, right? Since 1929, Negro workers, like white workers, have lost their jobs, have had mortgages foreclosed on their farms and homes, have used up their small savings. But in the case of the Negro worker, everything has been worse in larger or smaller degree. The loss has been greater and more permanent. Technological displacement, which began before the Depression, has been accelerated, while unemployment and failing wages struck black men sooner, went to lower levels, and will last longer. Is this deja vu or something?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Because if we're still in the same stuff that we've been in since 1929, we're still going through the same stuff.
Yeah.
And the ones that realize and say, okay, forget this, because I'm not going through this BS anymore. You're looking at us as we're some sovereign citizens or something like that. We're some Islamic BIE. Watch out for these guys. Watch their papers kill people. FOH with all of that.
Yeah. They're still doing the same thing. They just took the blueprint from their so-called leaders from back in the day. All these black Lives Matter, black nationalist leader dudes, they're doing the same thing. I'm talking about on the funding behind it, the Black Lives Matter stuff, funding some so-called Europeans is backing that, some Jews is backing that, funding that.
Mm-hmm.
And then so-called black people, unconscious Moors, people who probably know they Moors, getting the kickback from it. But they were doing that stuff during the Civil Rights Movement and all of that, the NAACP, all of that. Exactly. They just took the blueprint, all of that. Let me read this document right here.
Yeah, more good. Good.
They got it's called The Jews and the Civil Rights Movement. Right here it says we know they're so-called Jews, but it says American Jews played a significant role in the founding and funding of some of the most important civil rights organizations, including the National Association of Advance of Colored People, NAACP, Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. In 1909, Henry Moskowitz joined W.E.B. Du Bois, because you was talking about him earlier.
Yep.
But so he was, like Grand Sheik said, it was our own, but he came back on the other side because he knew he was doing his people wrong. But the foundation of what they did, it continues on saying W.E.B. Du Bois and other civil rights leaders, so there was more of them too, to found the NAACP. Kivy Kaplan, a vice chairman of the Union of American Hebrew Congregation, now the Union for Reform Judaism, served as the national president of the NAACP. That's look at this. Arnie Arson worked with A. Philip Randolph and Roy Wilkins to fund the leadership conference. And these are all so-called Jews. That says, during the Civil Rights Movement, Jewish activists represented a disproportionate number of whites involved in the struggle. Jews made up half of the young people who participated in the Mississippi Freedom Summer in 1964. And that reminds me too of in the Black Lives Matter, when they be out there marching, and them so-called Europeans that be out there too. It just reminds me of the same thing. Like, that's all a setup. It's all a setup because they're backing it already. They want you to be out there because we already know the Civil Rights Act. Now here we go. We know that the Civil Rights is unconstitutional. We know that. Now listen to this. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were drafted in the conference room of Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism under the aegis of the Leadership Conference, which for decades was located in the Reform Judaism Center. The Jewish community has continued support of civil rights laws addressing persistent discrimination in voting, housing, and employment against not only women and people of color, but also in the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender community and the disabled community. This is what you guys want your civil rights? like look, the Jews are backing that, so-called Jews. The Civil Rights Act, the so-called Civil Rights Act was passed in the Jewish Reform Center. They made the Jews, they made the call in the Jews building.
Yep.
When you do the so-called the case, when you look up the case for the Civil Rights Act case, the lawyer who fought for the civil rights to win, he was a Jew. The judge, the so-called judge, who was supposed to be the one that was making the call for after the case, he was a Jew. It's all a setup. It was all, and they're still doing it today. Still doing it today. It ain't changed. They're still doing it. It says Rabbi Abraham and Joshua Hexel marched armed in arm with Dr. King. Okay?
That's that same picketing, marching. That Martin came to his senses and told you that he was integrating you into a burning building.
Yep.
Told you. Hearing him? Nah.
Look, I got last one. From 1910 to 1940. Well, that year again, 1910 to 1940. More than 2,000 primary and secondary schools and 20 black colleges, including Howard, Dillard, and Fisk universities, were established in whole or in part by contributions from Jewish anthropologist Julius Wanswald.
So black guys have a school because of the Jews.
Look at that.
Black guys have a university, HBCU and all that stuff. Because Jews assisted. Now the question is, why would Jews assist these Negroes? Why did Jews assist these Negroes? Because they know that they're going to be carrying on the dumb-down program. That everybody that leaves one of our quote-unquote colleges or universities, they're going to go to some European establishment or whatever like that and help build that up instead of going back to their nation. Because they have a nation, but they don't want to be that. They don't want to be that.
Nope.
They want to be everything but.
Everything else.
They want to be everything but.
Yeah, Great Sheik, their rights were made, so-called blacks' rights were made in the Jewish Center. That's bugging me out. At the Jewish Center. You guys they talked about it's 1965. But I thought the so-called black man don't have a date. You know, and that you guys didn't get rights in 1965.
Yeah,
and it was made in a Jewish home center.
They're the ancient people, but they just got rights in 65.
It's 65. Ancient. Predate everybody, all of that.
Civil little mortus rights.
Yep.
Civil little mortus rights. That's what they got.
Them guys was playing. You guys gave you rights. Same place they play bingo at. You got rights in that room.
And not even some whatever Jewish bingo.
And they walking around, picketing, marching, yelling. Oh, an illusion. That's an illusion.
All for an illusion.
All an illusion. It was made. They was playing house when they gave you guys rights. They was playing house, playing games. It was all an act.
Because remember, never forget, all of them are Moors. Never forget, all of them are Moors. I don't care what they're claiming.
Oh yeah.
I don't care what they're claiming.
Oh yeah.
If they're dark-skinned people, they're Moors.
Yeah.
And they're part of the Moorish nation already. They don't need to create a nation. They can create a state, but that state they create better be mental.
Yeah.
Right? These people knew exactly what was up. 34. Been knew. The color, no, go ahead, Mark.
But you can just see it too. Like, it's just crazy how once you just read the record, you be like, it was really our own that was participating in this fraud.
Yep.
And then you look at it, and then if you step back and look at it now, it's still your own. It's still your own.
Still your own today.
Thing.
Today. Stuff hasn't changed. History repeats itself. That is some scary stuff. You know what I mean? History repeats itself is why, mother who's out of her mind is looking at her son like her baby daddy that she hates with all of her heart because he looks like him. History repeats itself. The colored people of America are coming to face the fact quite calmly that most white Americans do not like them and are planning neither for their survival nor for their definite future if it involves free, self-assertive, modern manhood. This does not mean all Americans. A saving few are worried about the Negro problem. A still larger group are not ill-disposed, but they fear prevailing public opinion. The great mass of Americans are, however, merely representatives of average humanity. They muddle along with their own affairs and scarcely can be expected to take seriously the affairs of strangers or people from whom they partly fear and partly despise. Right, so that's why the Negro is a coon.
Yep.
The coon's not the sellout. The coons, all these people that call themselves Negroes. Why? Because they're like raccoons. They're animals, and they're living beings. But God damn it, don't be coming in my yard. You will get beat to death with this stick right here. Because I'm not even playing with you guys.
Don't be coming in my yard.
I seen you guys eat a squirrel.
Right. Coming in my yard, digging in my trash, leaving a mess.
Leaving a mess. Opening the stuff with the lock on it like, who are you guys?
Yep.
Right? That's how people look at Negroes. Just like raccoons.
And that's it. And then the guys of Negroes, because they're Moors, like you said. But then that goes back. That's how you know they're laughing at us.
Right.
Because they're making videos about, Moors are the biggest traders in the world. But not the way you guys are saying it. Like, you guys are the traders.
Yeah.
The guys are black.
Exactly.
You're still Moors.
Those are the real traders, the ones who don't want to be Moors. And they're pointing at people in fezzes and saying, those are the traders. No, not the ones without the fezzes are the traders.
Right.
The ones who sold out your flag and sold out your birthright.
Yep.
The ones who sold out all your profits.
And call you part and partial.
You know what I mean? The ones who told you that this nationality card is for this club that we have called Moorish whatever. Those are the sellouts. The ones who put you under civil rights acts that were made in Jewish bingo halls.
Right. Look at that. Yep.
Those are the sellouts right there. Those are the dirty Moors on a grand scale. On the grand scale. Right? On the grand scale.
Got you in there marching and voting. I had my son. I'm sorry, go ahead, Gracie.
No, go ahead, more.
No, I was just saying, I had my son for his homework supposed to read, so 20 minutes a day. He was reading this book I got called Selected Charters of America from 1609 to the 1800s. So he's reading the breakdown of all the, specifically here, so-called at Massachusetts. And he's looking at how, they got a charter and how they first started up in 1628 and to set up and do business. And he's reading it. And it says to do fishing. He looked at me. He said, fishing? I laughed so hard because that's right. Like, these people out here talking about go vote and do, they supposed to be fishing. These people supposed to be fishing, doing business. They gotta. That's why, like the mother said, pull up their charter. You'll see these colonists are supposed to be here doing business, fishing, and stuff like that. Now people talking about license, registration, and go vote. What y'all talking about?
Yeah.
What y'all talking about? Civil rights and Jewish homerooms and all that. What do you mean? The 10-year-old just read a book, looked up charter, what it meant in Black's Law Dictionary, and said, oh, they had a business plan to do fishing? 10 years old. He figured that out.
Wow.
10 years old. But they marching and picketing? Look at them.
Yep.
Look at them. That's the sellout is serious. The illusion is even crazier.
Yeah, the illusion is crazier. The illusion is crazier. Crazy.
All of that. If you gonna go vote, shit. Wait, what are y'all talking about? Fishing. These people supposed to be fishing. Fishing, right in the book. I said fishing. But now look at, because you accepted the illusion, the fraud. Now look at this.
Yep.
Now look at this. A church every 3 steps, a liquor store every 4th step.
Church every, yeah.
Remember we was building it earlier because where's the Moors, whatever.
Yeah.
Remember, you guys are Moors. You just are spending all your so-called money on booze, liquor, church, and cosmetics.
Yeah.
You're going to get that's where all the Moors, whatever is that, the billions of notes that we spend on that stuff, that's where all our stuff is.
Yeah.
Right there. Where's the Moors? Yeah, right there. All those so-called blacks, you're not black. You're Moors. And all your stuff is in that. Cosmetics, booze, and church.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That's what it's limited to. So every time you remember, every time you ask yourself, hey, how come the Moors didn't look at yourself and ask yourself why you didn't do it? Because you're a Moor too. Stop playing. Trying to put stuff on Moors like we're supposed to hold, like we're supposed to take your L's because we're Moors and you're not Moors. No, you hold your own L's. What you talking about? For many years, it was the theory of most Negro leaders that this attitude was the insensibility of ignorance and inexperience that white America did not know of or realize the continuing plight of the Negro. Accordingly, for the last 2 decades, we have striven by book and periodical, by speech and appeal, by various dramatic methods of agitation to put the essential facts before the American people. Today there can be no doubt that Americans know the facts, and yet they remain for the most part indifferent and unmoved. For a nation with this start in culture and efficiency to sit down and await the salvation of a white God is idiotic. With the use of their political power, their power as consumers, and their brain power, added to that chance of personal appeal, which proximity and neighborhood always gives to humans and human beings, Negroes can develop in the United States an economic nation within a nation, able to work through inner cooperation to found its own institutions, to educate its genius, and at the same time, without mob violence or extremes of race hatred, to keep in helpful touch and cooperate with the mass of the nation. This has happened more often than most people realize. In the case of groups not so obviously separated from the mass of people as the American Negroes. It must happen in our case, or there is no hope for the Negro in America. Remember, this is 34. They just told people, go join the Moorish Science Temple and be done with it. But couldn't do that in 34 because everybody's looking at the temple as, what the hell is this?
Yep.
These guys are losers. Not joining that. How are we joining that? Got people murdering people and stuff like that. How's joining that stuff? Might as well just be Negro over here. Go pick some cotton. Go build some cars. Or I can't build cars because I can't be part of that union because I'm a Negro. So I'll take whatever I get. That when we have the ability to develop an economic nation within a nation, right? And what's the economic nation within a nation? Your grand treasury. U.S. calls it a Federal Reserve. But as a nation, you have an economic hub that all the finance of the nation goes through that. Right?
They stuck in the illusion. They don't see it. They don't see they don't see how we have our own already. You know, they've been in that illusion so long, they just can't. Because that's why they always ask, well, where's the more of this? Where's the more? Yeah. It's already there.
You're
just stuck in the illusion over there.
Exactly.
That's fraud. That's fake. That's not real. That's not real. Countries don't have presidents don't run countries. They run corporations.
If the leading Negro classes cannot assume and bear the uplift of their own proletariat, they are doomed for all time. It is not a case of ethics. It is a plain case of necessity. The method by which this may be done is first for the American Negro to achieve a new economic solidarity. It may be said that this matter of a nation within a nation has already been partially accomplished in the organization of the Negro Church, the Negro School, and the Negro retail business. And despite all the justly due criticism, the result has been astonishing. The great majority of American Negroes are divided not only for religious, but for a large number of social purposes into self-supporting economic units, self-governed, self-directed. The greatest difficulty is that these organizations have no logical and reasonable standards and do not attract the finest, most vigorous, and best educated Negroes. When all these things are taken into consideration, it becomes clear and more American Negroes that through voluntary and increased segregation, by careful autonomy and planned economic organization, they may build so strong and efficient a unit that 12 million men can no longer be refused fellowship and equality in the United States. W. E. B. Du Bois. So we know the Negro does not have a nation.
It's a brand.
Now, the reason why that came up was because I was reading an article about what if Black America were a country? What if Black America were...
It's like that. What if Alice in Wonderland was real? Like what do you mean?
What if Black America was a country?
See that? That's when you know that's when you know they got you. That's when they know you got you. You're gonna try to make something that's fake be real.
Right now, this is how bad it is, right? In a recent debate,
Black America, a country. Oh
in a recent debate with a CNN contributor, the conservative radio talk show host Larry Elder declared that if Black America were a country, it would be the 15th wealthiest country in the world. His math proved incorrect, and his math proved incorrect, and his invocation of Black America was followed by a refutation of the concept by a fellow Black conservative. Shortly after Elder's remarks, the Republican strategist Ron Christie argued that there is no such thing as Black America, and further that the very notion of its antithetical, the very notion of it is antithetical to our national motto of E pluribus unum. Okay? So these people know that there's no black whatever going on here, because they know that that national motto only applies to Europeans.
Yep.
So you can't even say United States is your nation, or United States of America is your nation, your Black nation that you belong to, because you're not included in that.
Nope.
Nothing to do with you. Go mind your business. Stop looking at people's stuff. Right? These are people who, you know, when they get your toy and then they don't want to give you back your toy, they want to hold your toy like it's yours.
Right.
And then they go and they're crying and telling people about you took their toy and shit.
Yep.
That's the Black Americans right there.
Yep.
Right? That's the
Black
fraudsters.
America, a country.
That's the fraudsters. The Negro nation within a nation. right? And they don't want to be they don't want to be a nation. They want to be a fake nation that's within.
Yep.
They want to be the nation. You know? Remember, all these people that have say that they got a flag and stuff like that. They got a red, black, green flag. There's no flag. You're not a nation. Only nations have those. Anybody could have a banner. Only nations have flags. And there's a lot of people that have banners right now posing as flags. A lot of them.
I don't even know how they did that. Made up a nation. You guys are slaves from Africa. You had if you accepting that story, you had a nation.
Exactly. Why don't you go back to that? Oh, but if they go back to that, then that means they have to get the F out of here. Because this is not your nation. This is Morocco over here. I don't know where y'all going to over there. But wherever you go over there, guarantee you those people are gonna send your ass back right here.
Yep.
The only people who over there that aren't getting any hassles are the people in Shashamani, because Haile Selassie told them they could go there. And the people in Liberia. Other than that, anywhere else you're going, those people are looking at you like, you're not from here. You're not from here.
Yep.
We know you're not from here. I see you trying to be like you're from here, but you're not from here. No way you're from here.
We got tons of videos online, so-called black people here going to Africa.
Yep.
The continent over there, telling people to come over there. But then they're complaining, talking about the Chinese treating them like this.
Yeah.
like what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you mean Chinese? I thought you went back to quote-unquote Africa. What do you mean Chinese are there? What do you mean?
Right.
What you mean? What do you mean? So what? So which one's worse, them or the European? Because you got to pick one now. And again, if you're claiming that you're from over there and you came over here, now you're a foreigner. So don't even expect anything. Zero expectations.
Oh yeah, Great Sheik.
Yeah, man.
There's a video all the more should look up. There's a video, the total opposite happened. It's crazy. I didn't send it to you. The total opposite thing happened. Remember the brother in Egypt who came over here and they classified him as white?
Yeah.
It's going on in South Africa. If you from here, so-called black, and you go over to the continent over there, in South Africa, they will classify you as white. But the ignorant so-called blacks that's going over there are fighting that they want to be black people. They don't want to be called white. And I said, oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I said, you took yourself out of slavery and put yourself right back again. I said, you guys are funny, man. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I just don't get that.
That is nuts. That is nuts. So.
And I'm like, wait a minute. What are you doing? Oh my goodness. And they call them. The lady was having an interview.
Yeah.
The so-called South Africans, they're warped too. They call her from here. They call her white. They call her white. They call her a white woman.
Yeah.
They call her white, and I'm like, okay, this whole thing is confusing. This whole thing is confusing now. Like, you guys literally know that it has nothing to do with complexion, but you guys still don't see how it means, like, it puts you, as this free white person, you know what I mean? Ties you back to the land. Like, they don't get that.
how it goes when you got stateless people.
It's crazy.
That's how it goes when you got stateless people.
And they're both stateless. She's sitting there talking about she hates the fact that they call her white. And they're sitting there calling her white. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. But you're calling her white because the colonists are telling you to call them white. You know, like the way their system is like here. But ours is on the hush. You know, they don't really talk about people from here coming over here being classified as white. They talk about that over there. Like they know.
That's crazy.
Put themselves right back into slavery. I was like, you was free. You made it. Well, because of your ignorance.
That is nuts.
And I see too, like that's a part of taking over, you know, the one world order for the Europeans. They're doing it through making sure that people are ignorant and docile.
Yeah.
We did the total opposite. We brought everybody out of darkness and try to make it a one world order.
Yeah. Knowledge being that. Knowledge being the order.
Right.
Everybody having the knowledge of the Moors, which is the knowledge.
Oh, I love the one world order for the Moors.
Yeah.
Our five principles is the cure to the one world order.
Yeah. Yeah, you implement those.
If your first principle is love, I ain't got no problem with that one world order at all.
Yeah, straight up. And it's that simple. Love principle. And again, these are things that, you know, that qualify a nation. You know, what type of standards are they living by? You know, that no matter what their condition, they're dealing with love as the first principle. You know, and you go through all the principles: truth, peace, freedom, and you start realizing that, you know, if you ask anybody about these principles, nobody's going to be in denial of any. Right? But you let Black Lives Matter put together some whatever demands that they want. See how much stuff people are going to be crashing off the list. No, we can't work with you because of that, because of that, because of that, because of that. They're the Moors. The Moors go to anybody. Would you be a Moor if these are the principles that we have to live by? But so it's going to be us that do it. It's going to definitely be us. So we were talking about our friend earlier that's using certain books as a reference. And they don't want to be Moors. They're not realizing what's going on. It's right in their face. So know that during the time of dark-skinned people ruling the planet, the only opposition like that was pale-skinned people. Or if you look at it from a religious perspective, Catholic Christian people against Muslim people, Islamic people. That's across the whole entire world, because the only place that these Europeans were in those areas called quote unquote Europe. There's no Europeans in America or nothing like that. There's no Europeans in South Africa or nowhere. They were only in that little pocket. They were nowhere else, unless Moors took them somewhere. So when you see a title like Christian slaves and Muslim masters, realize that the Christian slaves part was a little pocket of people. The Muslims masters part was vast and expansive. Do you have any adds to that, more?
Islam. We already, the Luella J. Hall, she goes in on it extensively. The slave trade for Christianity, for the Moors, was a lucrative asset. It was big time. Like, I forgot the wording she used, but when I looked it up, it was something similar to like the stock market. With stocks and everything sell.
Yeah.
That was slavery. The first stock market was Europeans on the slave market. That was the first stock market. That's how expensive business was for slavery for the Moors. Like when we was kidnapping and ransoming Europeans. It was one instant, because now another thing, the emperor, that's modern. It was a Sharif thing. It was her. She was the first so-called emperor. It was a Sharif thing. And what the thing was, when they called us pirates or whatever, and we was destroying and kidnapping and ransoming, a lot of those gold, everything that we was getting, a lot of that was going on because she was telling us to go get it. I just want to let people know how powerful she was at that time. And Luella J. Hall, she goes in extensively on that, the power of the Moabites at that time, how they was making the calls. Like, and I was looking at it like, well, like now, today, like if she would be like, well, you're not getting no loving until you need the world. And literally, at this time, those Moabites wanted the world. Yeah. They wanted the world. And now,
say not no rock on no finger, BS.
No. What? I want his head. I want that on the wall. It's like, what do you mean? Like, none of that. These Moabites was the head honchos, man. They was the ones.
Just in case, you just want to say Islam to the mothers.
That's right. Islam to the mothers.
Honors to you, mothers. We love you.
That's right. Because they was the ones. They was the ones. They were the ones. They were the how they talk about the Moors, they chemistry, alchemy, all the ladies was teaching that.
Yep. The oracles.
The ladies, the Moabites was in there teaching all of that. Teaching all of that.
Yep. I never seen a chat so crazy.
She was the first emperor was it's called the Shariftan Empire. You can look it up. The Shariftan Empire. That's her. She was running everything. That's how I'm like, man, slavery was big business for mother. We was doing everything to make her happy.
Yeah. Had to do it too.
Had to.
Only way you'll survive.
You will be replaced. I remember I was reading that.
Yeah.
What was that? I was reading that. What was that? World's Great Men of Color from J.A. Rogers.
Yeah.
It was one part he was going in about a Moabitess and the importance of how it was one of them. The enemies that she had when she went to war and she would kill them all. Mind you, her whole army were women. Her whole army was women. And you like say we're going to her castle or whatever. You know how in the movies when they open up the castles, the men come and they push the door open. You know, they got to manually do a big old door.
Right.
It will be the woman would do it, but the door was made out of men's heads.
That's crazy.
That it would be like 7, 9 women opening, pushing the door open. And the whole door was made out of men's heads. I was like, yeah, that's good. That's amazing. When I read that, I was like, oh my goodness.
That's some next level.
Amazing.
Islam mothers.
Islam to the mothers.
Islam to all the mothers. Please let me keep my head. Please. Yeah, Wonder Woman, straight up.
Not accept. And that's when we was not accepting the illusion. Yeah. Everything goes right back to it.
Right. All we gotta do is stop with the illusion. Deal with the reality. Here's some illusion for you.
Robert C. Davis, Christian Slaves, Muslim Masters, White Slavery in the Mediterranean, the barbarian coast in Italy, okay? So when the elders would tell you that the Moors went down into Italy and they lined up all these Edomite women and popped them, and they killed off the majority of the men, it's true. It's all right. So a lot of the Italians walking around today have Israelite heritage through their fathers, which makes them Israelites.
What?
What? What just happened? See?
What just happened? What just happened? Hold on a second. What just happened?
Happened? That was amazing. I don't even know how he got that.
And he did it so normal. He didn't even budge. No flinching, nothing, yo. He just
in the Mediterranean,
ran right into that.
Mediterranean, the barbarian coast in Italy.
That was like the brother that said, yo, you want to see something, man? I'm gonna put my hand through this wall right here.
Right. Right. Yo, that was a crazy move he just did.
Yeah. That was crazy.
Okay. So when the elders would tell you that the Moors went down into Italy and they lined up all these Edomite women and popped them, and they killed off the majority of the men, it's true. It's all right. So a lot of the Italians walking around today have Israelite heritage through their fathers, which makes them Israelites. That whole confusion of face thing, which you clowns out there just cannot seem to embrace that an Israelite is all about your father's sperm. And if an Israelite impregnates a woman who looks completely opposite of him, sometimes the children can come out looking like the mother, and you.
So, but I thought he said that it was Moors that. How we start talking about Israelites and all this stuff and sperm and all this stuff like that? How did all that stuff come out of Moors went into Italy? Okay, well we already dealt with that. We already dealt with that. Okay.
I can't even. Like, how did you do that?
Yeah, let's just pull that up again because that's very.
That was like.
I don't know what to call that.
He didn't even do the okie doke. He just did it.
Yeah,
Usually, you gotta slowly pull the sleeve up, do the illusion tricks, wind the hands in front of the eyes, and then woof. He didn't even do that. He just woof. I'm like, I saw everything.
Yeah.
I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw the trick, man.
Yeah.
Your strings hanging from your. I saw it the whole time, man. I saw it the whole time.
The feet under the curtain.
I've seen it.
The feet under the curtain.
The feet under the curtain.
This dude is slick, yo.
Barbarian coast of Italy, okay? So when the elders would tell you that the Moors went down into Italy and they lined up all these Edomite women and popped them, and they killed off the majority of the men, it's true. It's all right. So a lot of the Italians walking around today have Israelite heritage through their fathers, which makes them Israelites.
Moors turned into Israelites.
The Moors turned into Israelites.
The Moors turned into Israelites. The Moors turned into Israelites.
Never read that in anything. Where did he get that from?
Yeah, we would like to get a reference point for that one. Because that fade right there, I know you didn't do that fade, bro.
Right. That's not in the J.A. Rogers Nature Knows No Color line that he has in front of him. That's not in there.
Yeah. Anywhere that says anything about more in here has nothing talking about Hebrews or Moors.
He said it. He said the elders told us the Moors, da 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 da. And then he said the elders told us. Okay, the elders told you, and then now you're sitting there talking about the Moors, King Israelites. Like that's not what the elders told you.
Yeah,
the elders told you the Moors.
That's how you know these people have no honor. Like no honor. And then again, they have no honor because they don't honor the matriarch. They honor the patriarch.
Yep.
And the patriarch, following the patriarchy is death and destruction. Look around. We're under patriarchy right now. The problem is the male. Because he's supposed to honor mother. He's not supposed to be on himself. No homo. You can't be on yourself. Boosting yourself. It can't go like that. The honor has to go to mother. Because we all know that without mother, we wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm.
Dad brought us here.
Never seen a man have a child in the history of humanity. Never. Never.
That little hole right there, and no baby coming out of that, bro. Sorry.
It's just impossible. It's just impossible. It doesn't even make sense.
But this goes back to that thing about the nation. Right? The nation is always she. The nation is never he. As soon as they're talking about he nation, you know that these people are the nation within. They're not the nation. Right. And why be the nation within when you could be the nation?
That's right. That's right. It's Nate her, not Nate him. Nature.
Yeah.
Nature. Not Nate him, Nate he.
Yeah,
nature.
it's her heritage, not himitage.
Right.
You know, himitage going on. Heritage.
Heritage.
Because that's really what it's about.
That's right. That heritage. So like
Honoring the matriarch.
somebody asks you, what's your heritage? They're asking you, who is your mother?
Who's your mom? Oh, Moabites. Oh, Moabites, all right, and then they have a reference point. You know, they can go in either direction if you tell them Moabites. They can go before them and they can go after them. To somebody you're Israelite. No.
Abraham, that's a man.
Can't be through the
Even
father.
if they're doing that, you know.
Can't be through the father. As soon as you start talking about through the father, you already set yourself up for failure.
Yep.
You're already gonna fail. Your nation's already done. Right, straight.
Because you can't reproduce. You
What's
can't
the father gonna
produce.
be? Father didn't make himself. We know mother made herself in the form of a sister. But father never made son. Tripping.
You know, only a mother can make a nation.
Yeah.
Literally. My great grandmother had 15 children. You know how many cousins, aunts, uncles, and stuff that makes me I get to have because of that? That's a nation.
Yep.
They can create nations.
Crazy.
Through the man.
Islam. Where is he at? Yeah, no, as soon as they start talking that patriarch stuff, just back away slowly.
When the
Whole confusion.
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just gonna say, just everybody knows too, in ancient history, the first so-called gods was mother. The first gods was mother.
Mm-hmm.
It's not father nature, it's mother nature.
And it was never been father nature either. It's never been father Africa. Never.
Right. Nope.
Ever.
Or the fatherland.
Never been the fatherland. But these people are patriarchal? Yep. Think about it. They're talking about motherlands, but they're patriarchal. That's a supreme contradiction.
They're just talking to be talking. That's what my son said. They're just talking to be talking, Daddy.
They're just talking to be talking.
Of face thing, which you clowns out there just cannot seem to embrace that an Israelite is all about your father's sperm, and if an Israelite impregnates a woman who looks completely opposite of him, sometimes the children can come out looking like the mother, and you won't be able to identify them by their physical characteristics, but they still have the spirit of their father, the spirit of Israel in them. And it just baffles me why so many unlearned effeminate, emotional clowns can't seem to understand that. All right. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into this book. It says, I in part chose to do so because of the topics and approach. I'm reading in the introduction. Start at page 24. All right, in the introduction. And it said, okay, I'll start up a little bit above. The bondage of Black Africans to white Europeans or Americans that has become for many scholars an archetype.
That's how you know these people don't study or whatever. Because right there, you should have stopped and corrected about the American. Are you talking about black whatever and white Americans?
Africans to white Europeans or Americans, 24. All right, in the introduction. And it said, okay, I'll start up a little bit above. The bondage of Black Africans.
Right? Black Africans, a contradiction. Because those Europeans on the continent aren't from South Africa. And this is, again, how you know that you're not dealing with individuals who have a foundation of knowledge as their base. They're scattered. They're limited to only one thing. You know these people don't read. Because that messes up the historical reference point now. Because there ain't no white Europeans or Americans. They're not Americans. Americans are the copper-colored natives. But again, Moors like to give away their birthright and have anybody claiming their birthright to the point where they can't even use their own birthright. And not because they can't physically, but because they gave it up. They abandoned it, so somebody else is using it. So you can't use it right now. Sorry. Don't tell me about, well, I gave you the bike an hour ago. She's gonna give up the bike. You already know when you give that guy the bike, he doesn't come back for hours. Watch these people. And then keep in mind also that when they're talking about Barbary, they're talking about Moorish. When they're talking about Barbary, they're talking about Moorish. They're very aware. But people are going to take things and just, in their speech, say that it's something else. And people are just supposed to let things slide.
Of Venice. He is currently studying the subject of Israelite heritage through their fathers, which makes them Israelites. You know, that whole confusion. I in part chose to do so because of the topics and approach. I'm reading in the introduction. Start at page 24. All right, in the introduction. And it said, okay, I'll start up a little bit above. The bondage of Black Africans to white Europeans or Americans that has become for many scholars an archetype and model of all studies. In part, I chose to do so because of topics and approach that have grown up in America. Slavery provides such a fertile conceptual ground of application to the Barbary Coast, all right? Where in the Barbary Coast is that the upper northwest coast of Africa, and that part is just below Europe. So where Morocco and, where the Straits of Gibraltar and all that, that's was referred to as the Barbary Coast during from probably about the 16th century all the way up to the 18th century. All right. And it says where slavery is hardly unknown, but still strangely neglected field of intellectual as opposed by narratives in the course of many of my studies of the so-called barbary regencies of the Italians who were caught up in Islamic slave trade practice. I was so increased by the reason that it makes the two arenas of bondage, Black American and white African, especially appropriate intellectual studies. All right, so he's admitting that Italians, Caucasian Italians, went into slavery around the same time that Jake was going into slavery. And the reason being is that Jake and Esau was at war even then, and as they still are to this day, because there still was a lot of Jakes when the slave trade, when the Moors were expelled out of Portugal and Spain, there was still a lot of Jakes all throughout Europe in high places, you know, and a lot of them were Moors because most of the ones who were professing their Christian.
Yeah, boy.
What's a Jake?
I think he's talking about a Jacob.
Oh, there was no Jacobs in Kai. What? Wait a minute. Okay.
That's the only thing that makes sense to me. That was another sliding of, you know, not qualifying what the hell you talking about.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Because Jacob, that would be another way of saying Israelites.
I guess so.
What is he saying? It doesn't even matter. It's all those people in high places in Europe was Moors.
Right.
Brother Abdullah breaks that down perfectly. All the saints of Europe were Moors. All the saints of Europe were Moors. He has the book in front of him. Nature knows no color line.
Nature knows no color line, right there. Yep.
It's right there.
Yep.
J.A. Rogers doesn't even write the word Jacob in the book.
And we'll just go a little further with regard to Jacob and Esau with the metaphysical Bible dictionary, since they like to bring out books. Jacob and Esau represent the mental and the animal consciousness within each of us. Esau, the hairy man, typifies the animal, which comes first into expression. Most of the human family let him rule in consciousness, but in the line of human unfoldment, this man of nature, Esau, must be supplanted by a higher type called Jacob, the supplanter, the mentality or understanding. Jacob also represents an idea of the I am identity through which the faculties of the mind receive their original inspirations. Jacob had 12 sons, to each of whom he gave an office, and each of whom he blessed or inspired with his spiritual wisdom. The Bible narrative about Jacob and Esau has always been read historically, and theologians have had trouble trying to excuse Jacob and Rebekah for the apparent duplicity that they perpetrated upon Esau. When read in the light of spiritual understanding or considered as part of the history of the unfoldment of the individual soul, the incident loses its aspect of duplicity, and we find that it is a description of the subtle working of the soul in the spirit evolution under the guidance of divine mind. The soul is progressive. We must go forward. The soul must meet and overcome its limitations. So everything is metaphysical. When they start talking about people enslaved, people in the Bible said that this guy did whatever, people are lost. Lost in the sauce. Because the metaphysical Bible dictionary would give you the metaphysical meaning of every single word in the Bible. Right? Chords is in here. Anytime you see chords, it means something. Right? Not just the names of the people. You know what I mean?
Quick question, Greg Sheet.
Yeah.
Did it say Esau is the higher is like basically is Esau and Jacob the same person?
Esau and Jacob supposed to be twins.
Seem to be what?
Twin sons.
Oh, okay.
And then one's the higher self, one's the lower self. One's the animal nature, and one's the divine nature. Esau was a hunter. He finds his pleasure in the realm of animal forces. The cravings of the lower nature are in the ascendancy. Esau gave his birthright to appease his hunger. The red pottage mentioned in the scripture symbology refers to the life substance of the body. The natural man is first in man's evolution. First that which is natural, then that which is spiritual, says Paul. We all agree that a strong body is required to express a strong mind. That is the divine plan. The men of the new race will have robust bodies. They will not be weaklings mentally or physically. Healing of the body is fundamental in the outworking of God's perfect man idea. The natural man is not wise. Esau was a hunter, and he loved sport better than spirit. He was not seeking development through soul culture, and in order to carry forward the whole man, it was necessary to supplant and suppress him. This is the meaning of the deception by Jacob and Rebekah. The mental must gain the supremacy, and the physical must lose prominence. This is what Jacob and Rebekah did. They got Isaac, I am, to acknowledge the mind as first in consciousness. Jacob went to another country, which represents apparent separation. And it goes on and on and on. So always have your metaphysical Bible dictionary when you are using the Bible as a reference. Because if you don't have the metaphysical Bible dictionary and you're looking at these things as people and all of that, you will lose the perspective of what the basic instructions before leaving Earth are giving you.
Christian, Acts 13:1, or proclaiming the secret Jews, as you can get in Mayor K. Serling's book. The secret Jews, well, most of them were expelled, and they went into slavery because all their when you read Mayor K. Serling's book about Christopher Columbus and the participation of the Jewish in the in the slave trade, or forget the exact name of the book, but you brothers in the know what I'm talking about. It clearly tells you that all the Jews were expelled from Spain, okay, and Portugal, and then Ferdinand and Isabella were taken over. What you gotta realize is that a lot of Israelites were still there, but they were the ones. A lot of them had clung on to Islam. They were making deals with the Edomites there. Basically, they were selling out. All right, and so you brothers that's holding on to that Moor stuff, man. The Moors sold out their own people, man.
But I thought the Moors were Israelites. I thought Moors turned into Israelites in order for the stuff to go good. But then when the BS stuff starts being talked about, now you're talking about people are Moors now? Now they're Moors?
Now they're Moors.
Well, now they're Moors. But before that, they were Israelites.
Right.
No problem with them being Israelites before that.
And see, that whole thing too, that the Jews, Muslims, and Christians, That's a European thought process. Because, again, the modern European at that time, in the 15th and 16th century, they didn't look at nationality. Their point of view was religion. They didn't look at nobody, oh, his bloodline is of this, his bloodline is of this. Whatever you worship, that's what you are. To them, that's their thought. That's how they was looking at stuff. Yeah. We knew that we was all one people. We was all one bloodline. We knew that already. We knew we was all Moors. We already knew that. Their perspective was religion. Because remember, Nicene Creed, when we had put this together for them, they only thoughts they can come out of is to think of religion. They didn't have a concept of the sciences of what we already knew. So that's why. So when they say, "Oh, us Jews and those Moors," no, those were both Moors. The Jews at that time, those were Moors.
Right.
Wasn't no two different people.
And again, why? Because when you look in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, it tells you what a Jew is. And a Jew is not a being. A Moor is a being. A Moor is an individual. A Jew is not that. Jew. Metaphysical meaning. As a descendant of Judah, son of Jacob, and as a member of the tribe or kingdom of Judah, a Jew signifies a thought springing from and belonging to the praise and inner life consciousness of the individual. As a Hebrew, which a Jew is in the broader sense, the significance is the same as that of Hebrew, which see. For the symbology of Mordecai the Jew, see Mordecai. See Jews also. Jewess, the soul or feminine aspect of that in consciousness for which a Jew stands. Jews. Jews in their highest aspect symbolize divine ideas or spiritual consciousness. Each individual has his formless and his formed mind, and they seem in the present race consciousness to be hostile one to the other. In the scripture, these are referred to as Jew and Gentile. Mind has two broad aspects, the formless and the formed. In its formless aspect, it is a unity. In its formed aspect, it is a diversity. It might be compared in its first aspect to vapor, and its second to the same vapor precipitated into crystals of snow. In the vapor aspect, there is a homogeneous whole. In the snow, each little crystal has form and character particularly its own. Raise these inanimate crystals to the plane of thought and free will, and you will have a parallel to the formed mind of humanity. In the New Testament, Jews symbolize our established religious thoughts and systems of worship. The Jews were always the hardest to reach with the new thought. The Jews were always the hardest to reach with the new thought. The Jews were always the hardest to reach with the new thought. They were very set in their religion. And they refused even to listen to new teachings of truth. So we find in ourselves that our religious convictions frequently stand in the way of our accepting the new revelations of truth that come to us. And once again, it goes on and on Jews, which again is not nobody.
Look at that.
Right? Look at that. And again, you can go back, watch the 2,000 classes or whatever like that to see if you really think that, you know, we're not putting you on to game. Well, right? To see if they're not putting you on to game. You weren't even saying anything that time, or you're about to say.
I wasn't saying a word.
Or you're about to say something. You had a thought.
I didn't say any. I'm listening to you.
Yo, the thought police.
It must have been you. It must have been you.
The thought police got you on that one.
They mad right now. You going in. Once you pull out that Bible dictionary,
once the Bible dictionary comes out, any Bible people are done for. I don't care what they rap.
He's doing too much.
All right. So remember, the Jew or the Israelite is the one that it's hard for them to get to accept the truth. They're going to fight you tooth and nail because they're stuck in their religion.
Yeah.
That's why they keep referring to King James Bible.
Right. As soon as they get stuck, as soon as you ask them a good question, they go back to the Bible.
Pull out something that has nothing to do with your question.
And start yelling over you.
Just because you're telling them truth. Just because you're telling them truth. And they don't want to hear it. Talking about yelling at people. Putting the spells out there that have the people in this dumb state of mind in the first place. Yelling it into the ethers.
Yeah.
Giving all their energy to put their people in mental servitude.
He even say something even crazier. Talk in the video later on. He says, he goes, "Oh, where Canaan is on the map, right? That's where Israel was." I said, "No, that's Canaan." Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? How is that Israel? That's not Israel.
How's that Israel when Canaanites came before Israelites? FOH.
Like, how did you just say that, man? How did you say that?
The same way he said Moors turned into Israelites. The exact same way. The exact same way. Right? Just look how sneaky he looks. You know he's trying to pull game on you. Sneaky.
Oh yeah, Islam too. Great Sheik. He's here where I'm at.
Yeah.
I went on his videos.
Yeah.
He's from here.
Look at that.
I said, oh wow, he's like around the corner.
Look at that.
He's around the corner from me. They be out here yelling too. I remember, perfect story. I remember I was traveling and they were outside yelling, you know, with their microphone and stuff like that. The thing was, while the Israelite was yelling, he has the microphone, but the microphone has the big loudspeakers, and as I'm traveling, I could hear through the loudspeaker. So he's singing his whatever, yelling it, and then all of a sudden, all I hear is the more. And I was like, that's right, Islam more, yelling it, because I heard him through the loudspeaker.
Yeah.
He seen me, and it was just like in awe, like he had to say more, but he tried to whisper it. He didn't even want to get it. He wasn't trying to say it out loud. He whispered it over the microphone, and it echoed through the speakers. Like, oh, now everybody heard you. Then I'm like, okay, Islam more. Like, don't act like you don't know what I was when you saw me. You know what I mean? Like, you know what it is.
Know the greeting and all that.
You know what it is.
Greeting and all that.
You see me, he just was like, what? Like, they're here too. Yeah, man. Yeah, you guys are not getting away with that mess anymore.
Straight up.
Out there yelling, saying stuff Moors were saying. oh, we're not black, we have a nationality. I was never yelling that outside on them streets.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. So that's new.
When did they start saying that? The Hebrew Israelites were saying that. They was never saying that.
Yeah.
They don't even, when the so-called, because you said it, the Jews got kicked out of Spain. So why when the so-called Jews got kicked out of Spain, why didn't they go back to Israel?
Ooh.
Because that stuff is fake.
Yep.
That stuff is extra fake. As soon as I read that, I said, so why didn't they go to Israel then? You know where they went? Check the history. They blended in with the Ottoman Empire. Check the history. You can research it. They went refuge right back to the Moors. The Ottoman Empire is the Moors.
What else are you gonna do? Why not go back home?
Because they're Moors. They know where they're going.
They're Moors. Any dark-skinned people, especially African Negroes, they're Moors. They telling you any other thing that they're talking some BS. They're not that.
Israel. None of that stuff even. That's Palestine. Why didn't they take Palestine in when they got kicked out of Spain? Why didn't they go to Palestine in? I should have went back to Palestine in.
Shit.
Nope, because that's a fraud. They made that up. They made that up.
Always making up stuff. Well, Islam more. We made it again.
Islam to the Moors, man.
We made it again. Another session. Don't forget, it's Tuesday, so you got a half hour.
That's it. Get your tea.
Go get your tea. Go get your stuff ready up. Islam to all the Moors worldwide. Say that again, more.
I was telling them, go chew on some cayenne and pepper and wake up.
Get ready.
Shoot.
Don't forget, MHHS, Eyes Wide Open at 9:30. 425-569-5201. 425-569-5201 or 347-945-5899. 347-945-5899. Peace and love to all the Moors. And don't forget another one to check out, algazeta.wordpress.com. ALGAZETA. ALGAZETA.wordpress.com. All right. And make sure you look up Negro head mushroom. Negro head mushroom. Just Google Negro head mushroom and tell me if that doesn't look like a blackamoor, not a Negro. Somebody's playing with us. Somebody's playing with us. Because there's no way that they can try to tell me that they're not messing around with us. They know what the hell they're doing. Don't fall for it.
Please don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe.
Don't
They
fall.
get you every time.
Don't fall for it. Because once you fall for it, then it's on you.
Yep.
Right? Study hard. Study hard, Morris. Study very hard. Peace and love to all. Don't forget, MHHS at 9:30. Keep studying, Morris. You already know what needs to be done. So let's just do it. Let's just do it.
Yeah.
Islam wars. Peace and
Islam.
love.
Moors are here to uplift a nation that's fallen. Instead of buying strip clubs, continuing or falling. Most sisters I know got baby daddy drama. Beating on the mother and he's the grand master. No patriarch or pimpin', he's the God of the earth. He calls it a man bag, I call it what it is, a purse. Making claims of strength but can't give birth. Walk into the room through the doors of the church or temple or tabernacle. They all represent her. The story of the first female popes is a blur. Not to mention the women saviors rule from both thrones. His and her throne was her own. As Ma'at holds the scales with no Tahuti. Though he was a sage scribe, he was her worker bee. See the big picture. Tahuti is thought, which represents thought. Divine manifest in mind molds the thought. Get the mind out the gutter light. You gotta treat the mothers right. Get your mind out the gutter light. You gotta treat our brothers right. Get your mind out the gutter light. You gotta treat the mothers right. Get your mind out the gutter light. You gotta treat our brothers right. Mind is man, but women first like we were taught in ancient schools, which were the wombs, even to the tomb, the afterlife womb. Born again on another realm or back for more truth about a culture as Moors, more by roof. See how far they spread, how deep the roots shoot. Get off the emotions, fire water potions. Get the shea butter, my sister, not Jergens lotions. Stop justifying BS, blaming racism. Biz Kane and G-Rap already erased racism. Go back to Dibble Underground, Tupac, or X-Clan and Fezzes leather that you call in a hat. Go back to medallion strings with beads. Golden era back to question so-called MCs. Pins and smooth operators, Asiatic kings. On a gold throne, four-finger twirling rings. Get your mind out the gutter light. You gotta treat the mothers right. Get your mind out the gutter light. You gotta treat our brothers right. Get your mind out the gutter light. You gotta treat the mothers right. Get your mind out the gutter light. You gotta treat our brothers right. These and verse curses, send out Orishas. Return like boomerangs, demons dropping with seizures. Calling for sweet Jesus, here comes Nagas Negas. Black handle hex on those trying to police us. Reverse a spell with white candles. Witches clothed as cashiers. Behind bars, sexual energy exchange for beers. And she's getting tips with help from whispering spirits. 285 hertz beats, hypnotized sound spell with lyrics. So soothed out their mind, can't hear but fear it. When the truth appears, they won't go near it. Songs are like Reiki, blockages they clear it. So focus on point and diligent, freedom above everything, mind's militant. Like wow, moment eureka when I speak to a sleeper. Make a master fruition and stop being believers. Get the mind out the gutter light. You gotta treat the mothers right. Get your mind out the gutter light. You gotta treat our brothers right. Get your mind out the gutter light. You gotta treat the mothers right. Get your mind out the gutter light. You gotta treat our brothers right. Treat them right. Circle 7, y'all. Treat them right. Treat them right. Treat them right.